We're all told that living on loans is a recipe for disaster, right? For most of us, debt feels like this trap. It's stressful, you're always trying to catch up. But what if I told you that for the super rich, it's actually one of the smartest things they do with their money? Yeah. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see exactly how the wealthy use debt to get even richer. And believe it or not, safer.
Okay, let's get right into it. The whole thing really boils down to this one core difference. For people like you and me, debt is usually a path to a whole lot of stress, and it's all backed by our income, our paychecks. But for the rich, it's a completely different game. For them, it's a tool, a powerful one for building wealth, and it's backed by the assets they already have. Same word, debt, but two totally different worlds.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How is that even possible? How can the exact same thing, borrowing money, be the thing that ruins one person's finances, but for someone else, it's the secret key to building generational wealth? It sounds kind of crazy, so let's unpack this.
All right, to really get the secret, we've got to start with the side of the story we all know way too well, the consumer debt trap. Let's break down exactly why this kind of debt feels like you're running on a treadmill you just can't get off of.
So think about what this kind of debt actually buys. Most of the time we're taking out loans for stuff that either immediately starts losing value, like driving a new car off the lot, or it just ties up our cash without making us any money, like our main home. And don't even get me started on credit cards. That's where the interest is compounding against you. So from the very first day, the game is already rigged against you.
And here's where it really hurts. Think about the flow of money. First, you earn your income. Then, bam, the government takes its share in taxes. And it's only with that leftover money that you can finally pay the bank. So you're getting hit twice. You're paying Uncle Sam and the bank's interest from the same already shrunken paycheck. It's a tough spot to be in.
There's a line from the source material that just nails this perfectly. It says that when you borrow this way, the bank basically becomes your landlord. Think about it. Until you make that very last payment, you don't really own your house, you don't really own your car, you're just renting it. And if you miss a payment, well, you know what happens.
So, ever wonder why the interest rates on these loans are so high? Well, it's because the only thing backing up that loan is your job, your future paychecks. And from a bank's point of view, a job is super risky. It could be gone tomorrow. So what do? They price that risk right into your loan. That means high interest rates and really rigid payment plans.
Okay, so that's the, let's be honest, kind of depressing reality for most people. But now let's completely flip the script. Let's look at how this whole equation gets turned on its head when the debt isn't backed by what you earn, but by what you own.
And this all starts with a huge shift in mindset. A typical borrower thinks, I need money so I can go buy something. But a wealthy borrower thinks, I already own plenty of valuable stuff, I just want some temporary access to cash. See the difference? It's not about buying something new, it's about liquidity. And that one little change, it changes absolutely everything.
This is where the key tool comes in, the asset-backed loan. It's exactly what it sounds like. The bank isn't even really looking at your W-2. They don't care about your salary. They're looking at your stock portfolio, your real estate holdings, your businesses. They're lending you money against the value of what you already have, not what you're hoping to earn next year.
And because the bank's risk here is so low, if things go south, they just take some of your stocks. They give you an amazing deal. We're talking way lower interest rates, super flexible payment options, the whole 9 yards. And this is the key takeaway right here. It's not having a loan that makes you a risky borrower. It's the lack of assets.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty, the actual playbook. How do the wealthy use this strategy to literally fund their lives? We're talking yachts, mansions, everything, without ever having to sell a single share of stock.
It really comes down to a simple 4-step loop. Step 1, you build up a big portfolio of assets that banks trust. Step 2, you borrow against it, but only a small, safe fraction of what it's worth. Step 3, and this part is kind of wild, you often only pay the interest on the loan, not the principal. And then step 4, when the loan is due, you just refinance and do it all over again. And you can keep this cycle going, well, pretty much forever. So what kind of assets are we talking about here? Well, banks love stuff that's stable, that grows in value, and is easy to put a price on. So think big, diversified stock portfolios, income-producing real estate, or even private businesses as long as they have predictable cash flow. From a bank's perspective, these are infinitely safer than someone's job.
Now, a huge part of making this work is being conservative. They're not borrowing every last penny they can. A super common loan-to-value ratio, or LTV, is just 20%. So for every $50 million in assets they have, they might only borrow, say, $10 million. This creates this giant safety buffer. So even if the market dips, everyone, both the borrower and the bank, is protected.
And now we get to what is, honestly, the most mind-blowing part of this whole thing. That $10 million they just borrowed, the cash that just hit their bank account, the income tax they pay on that is zero. A big, fat zero. How? Simple. It's not income. It's a loan. The IRS doesn't tax you on money you borrow.
Okay, so what happens when the loan comes due in, let's say, 5 or 10 years? Well, they definitely don't sell their assets to pay it back. That would trigger a monster tax bill on all the gains. No, they basically have two moves. Option A is to just take out a new loan to pay off the old one. Simple, the cycle continues. But option B is even better, and it's what usually happens. If their assets have grown in value, they take out an even bigger loan, use it to pay off the old one, and then they get to pocket the extra cash. Again, totally tax-free.
But wait, you might be thinking, eventually this has to stop, right? Somebody has to pay the piper. Well, not really. And this brings us to the final and maybe the most powerful piece of the entire puzzle. This is the move that lets this strategy roll on for generation after generation.
It's a little piece of the tax code called the step-up and basis. And honestly, it's just incredible. Here's how it works. When a person dies and leaves their assets to their heirs, the IRS basically hits a reset button. They pretend that the original purchase price of those assets was whatever they're worth on the day of death. So all that growth, all those millions in capital gains that piled up over a lifetime, poof, gone. Legally wiped clean.
Just look at the numbers here to see how powerful this is. Let's say you bought an asset for $1 million, and now it's worth $10 million. If you sell it before you die, you've got a $9 million taxable gain. Ouch. But if you hold on to it and your kids inherit it when it's worth $10 million, their new cost is $10 million. So if they sell it the next day for that same price, their taxable gain is zero. All those taxes just vanish.
And this is how they close the loop. The heirs can now sell a tiny piece of that inherited portfolio, tax-free, remember, and use that cash to pay off all those loans we've been talking about. The debts are gone. Almost all of the wealth is still intact, and the next generation is now sitting on a huge, clean portfolio, ready to start the whole cycle over again.
Okay, let's pull all this together. We've gone through the whole playbook, from the loans to the tax loopholes. So what's the real secret here? What is the one single thing that makes this entire financial engine run?
The true difference isn't the loan. The loan's just a tool, a clever tactic. The real secret, the bedrock foundation that this entire world is built on, is the ownership of productive, appreciating assets. That's it. Owning things that grow in value over time. That is the engine that drives everything we've just discussed.
And that leaves us with one final big idea to chew on. We came into this thinking that debt is the enemy, right? That it's the trap. But after seeing how the other side uses it, maybe we've been looking at it all wrong. So is the real problem really the debt, or is it the lack of assets?